Welcome to the Let Them Live podcast with Emily Burning, a place for meaningful conversations, real stories, and a shared mission to protect life. Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Let Them Live podcast. I'm Emily Burning, your host and co-founder and president of Let Them Live. I feel like every podcast I'm doing has a different background and layout. I just never really know where I'm at. So anyways, welcome back. I'm really excited for today's guest, Tacara. Tacara actually works with Let Them Live, and she has an amazing story. And I think she has a really unique viewpoint on a really common argument that people make for abortion. So we're going to talk about that. Disclaimer, my dogs are in the background. Her tail, one of them, just her tail came up. So if you hear some dogs barking, yeah, this is just real life. So that is what we're dealing with today. But I'm going to go ahead and bring Tacara up here and welcome her on. Hey, Tacara.
Hey,
How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Good. Yeah, well, I think this was a long time coming. So maybe share, like, we've known each other for how long? Like a long time.
Yeah, I think it's been like 5 years, just kind of seeing each other here and there at different events and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I can't even remember how we first met. I was actually talking to someone about this the other day about how bad got the dog in the background, how bad I am about remembering like how I meet people. Do you remember how we first met?
Yeah, so it was actually here in Michigan, no, I might be wrong. It might have been in California at the live action gala the first
That's
time.
right.
And then we reconnected. It was kind of like the very beginning at the start of Let Them Live. And you had come out to Michigan, you and Nathan, and you were at like a Protect Life Michigan
Right.
conference. And you guys, were talking to people and stuff. And I was just like, hey, like, remember me? And then I feel like the rest is just history. Yeah.
Yeah, because we have mutual friends. So yeah,
Yeah.
so Tacara, you started with Let Them Live, like volunteering, and then now you're just real involved, fully involved. Like it's what you do besides being a mom. So tell everyone about yourself. Obviously, I know a lot about you. So give us like your little bio, I guess.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Tacara. I'm a mom of three. I have two little boys and one little girl. They are my world. I am married. I met my husband in the Marine Corps about 8 years ago, and then we've been married now for about 6 years. We live here in Michigan. I'm originally from Arizona. So I was born and raised in Arizona pretty much until I left to go to the military. And I've just done so many things. I've, worked in the hospitality industry. I worked on a cruise ship for a little bit in Australia. So that was cool. And then I'm actually adopted. So I was adopted when I was 7 from foster care. I was in foster care for about 3 years. So my family that took me in as a foster child ended up adopting me. So that was really cool. But my parents couldn't biologically have children, and so that's why they kind of chose to adopt. And so there's 8 of us, and all of us are adopted from foster care. So it's pretty cool.
I think that's amazing. And that like is that definitely like kind of the core or like tell me how your pro-life views kind of came to be.
Yeah, of course. So I actually wouldn't say I've always been pro-life, but I don't know what I was. I just, I kind of knew what abortion was, like, the basics, like you don't want a pregnancy anymore, so you just end your pregnancy. I didn't really know like the extent of abortion, but I know when I started getting involved back in like 2018, I started to research it more just because it was like a really, very out there topic that a lot of people were talking about. And I was like, okay, what the heck? Like, why is this such a big deal? And so I started looking into it. And then, of course, like just learning the procedures and all of that, like really just pulled at my heartstrings. And I was like, this is just so wrong. But then I would constantly see the argument of foster children and using foster children to kind of justify why abortion needs to be a thing, And for me, being a foster child, not coming from the most ideal circumstances before I was in foster care, that
Mhm.
really just like hit home for me.
Yeah,
And
you
I
took
was
it
just,
personally because
yeah.
people always say, like, this child should be aborted because they'll just end up in foster care. It's like, that's me you're talking about. Like, that's how you're feeling.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, nobody knows how someone's life is going to turn out. I'm very blessed. I do know our foster care system needs, reformation and needs to be, a huge fix. I get it. I understand, but the thing is if a child is born into a family where they're not, being taken care of and then they go into foster care, well, you don't know what kind of foster family they're going to go to or what's going to happen. And like I said, I'm blessed in the sense of I was adopted by an amazing mom and dad that took me in and love me so much like, I'm their own. And I know that's not the case for every child. I do understand that. But who are we to sit back and say, this child's life is worth less because you don't, they're going to end up in terrible circumstances, unloved.
Like,
And
who
it's like,
has a
well,
crystal ball for that? Like,
yeah, exactly.
who
And for one,
who
you
is
don't
like,
know. You
yeah,
don't
like,
know
"Oh,
where
I
they're
know
going to end up.
exactly."
But
Yeah.
regardless, like just because you're born into, not the most ideal circumstances doesn't make you any less valuable, any less of a person. And so I really just like really, hit home for me when I'd constantly see that argument. It's like why is my life worth any less because I wasn't born, wanted or loved or, and
And it's not
yeah.
like anything that you chose either. Like, we have to remember this, that the child in the womb, the fetus, whatever you want to call it, this human being that is growing in the womb has no control over
Mhm.
who their parents are or what their situation is. So it's not like that child should be automatically like discounted and like put in the like disposal pile. You know what I mean? Like, oh, their circumstances are going to be terrible. And also, tell me how you feel about this. Like, doesn't it feel, I don't know what the word is, but it feels pretty awful and like evil to be like, "Oh, you're not born into wealth and you're not going to have everything and you're not going to have opportunities," like, which again, we're just, that's just making things
Mhm.
up because you don't know. But like, it's like targeting, it's targeting lower income families. Like, that's weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, that for me is along the line of eugenics, really. It's kind of like let's just dispose of people that might need a little extra, time and commitment or resources, you know, and I also, I always hear, if we ban abortion, there's going to be all of these unwanted babies and they're going to go into the foster care system. And for me, it's like that right there proves that people making these arguments aren't actually really educated on how foster care works. Because in all reality, a lot of kids in foster care aren't actually up for adoption. The goal of foster care is to reunite them with their biological parents. And yes, many do get adopted, but a majority of these kids in foster care waiting to be adopted, as sad as it is, they are a lot older kids. We don't have this influx of just like infants in foster care. The thing is because there's a huge difference between like going, through adoption, like private adoption, and then a child being put in foster care because they were taken out of, bad circumstances or bad situations. So that argument for me is just like, no, all of these babies, their birth moms can choose to go the private adoption route and they can even pick out the family and choose if they want to still be involved. They're not just going to automatically go to foster care. There's not going to be this like huge influx of babies, because a lot of people do want to adopt babies. They do. There's a lot of people waiting to adopt.
Yeah,
And
aren't there more
so,
people waiting to adopt than there are like children available to be adopted? I'm
Yeah, I've
like
always
that.
heard that. I don't know the exact statistic, I could be wrong. I think I saw one time for every 20 or for every, baby being born, there are, like, 22 couples, like,
Mm,
for that one child, like, waiting to adopt. And so, yeah, there's, a lot of people are on waiting lists and things like that to
yeah,
adopt. So, for me, that's just such a bad argument and really just makes me feel like people are kind of using the foster care system and kids in foster care as this, like, you know, emotional argument type thing. They don't really wanna focus on the issue at hand, which is abortion. What is
right,
abortion? What does it do? So let's bring up another topic that
right,
might be a little heavy for people, like
right.
foster care.
Well, when you're trying to defend something like abortion, when people are trying to, stand up for and support abortion, honestly, that's a really hard thing to do because of what it is in its nature, and
Mhm,
so it's very typical for people to pull at the most extreme cases, the most, heartfelt cases to try to, justify abortion when in reality, like, the majority of abortions that are happening have nothing to do with, cases that are super extreme.
mhm,
And that is just honestly pretty awful because it just feels like you as, someone who was in the foster care system or, victims of rape, for example, are being used for like a bigger agenda. Um, how does that feel to you to be kind of used like that?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does not feel great, and like I said, that is why I really started to kind of get involved within the pro-life movement, was to really just bring education to people that are using people like me as a justification for, all abortions, and it's just really kind of sad that that's where we're at in society, that, people really just are okay with kind of using people in their stories. Even if you don't know that person, like, we're out there and we're seeing your comments and we're seeing these videos, and it's like sometimes just take a step back and put yourself in that person's shoes. I always think of, when you go out and you see, like, people living on the streets or like the homeless population, you would not go up to that person and say, "Hey, you're homeless now. You don't, you're not living in good circumstances. I think it would be better off to just, end your life. Like, I don't think you should be here because, like, you're a burden
Yeah,
and
how
you're."
awful would that be?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's kind of the same thing, I feel like. Let's end your life before you become a burden or, aren't wanted or loved, and it's just.
And that's the other point. Like what you just said to Kara, it's like, let's end your life before negative circumstances, right? But I don't really understand people who think that life can ever be perfected where there's no struggle, there's no pain, there's no sadness. Like, that's part of life. Every single person, no matter what. Like, I was born into my biological family. I never, wanted for anything growing up. Like, we had everything we needed. Have I still struggled a whole lot in my life and had crazy things come at me and sadness and pain and anger and suffering? Yes. Like, no matter what circumstances you're born into, life is going to life. And I think that this is just one example. Like the foster care argument for abortion is just one example of people trying to justify abortion, like, by saying life is gonna be tough. Well,
Mm.
life is gonna be tough no matter what. So, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, on just even just the culture of people, like, trying to it's like we're trying to get rid of any suffering, any pain, like, happy, happy, happy all the time.
Yeah, and, you know, the thing is like you said, we we live in a broken world. We live in a fallen world where there is gonna be pain and there is gonna be suffering, but you know, I sometimes look at my situation, my circumstances growing up, and I just like look at where I'm at today. And I am kind of, in a way, like, a little bit thankful for my past because I feel like it's made me the person I am today. And it's made me, want to be even better for my children and to be the best mom that I can be. And it's like everyone goes through things and everyone experiences things, and we can learn and grow from our past. And that doesn't make us like any less of a person, or, just not we're not going to be as good as other people because of our past. It's like anybody can take something terrible and turn it around and make it for good.
Well,
It's
that's exactly what I wrote down like on my little notepad for my thoughts. Was like the underdog story. And what's so ironic about people who support abortion and use like foster care as a justification for abortion, what's so ironic about it is that people love underdog stories. Like, as human beings, we love an underdog story. Like,
Mhm.
whenever there's movies and it's about, someone who grew up in poverty and is now, the richest man on earth or whatever it is, someone who's come from nothing and has made something of themselves and has helped other people. Um I don't know if you can hear my dog lapping water next to me. Just like I lost my train. Um
I don't
but
hear.
okay, good. People love those underdog stories. And if you don't have any like struggle or suffering in your life, then there's nowhere up to go, no encouragement that you can give other people. It's like if we keep eliminating people because we think that maybe they'll have a bad life. I mean, also, who are we to determine how someone's life is going to be?
Yeah, exactly. And another point I kind of wanted to hit on here was, with the whole foster care argument, I get, like I said in the very beginning of the interview, the system definitely needs to be reformed. It definitely needs a lot of work. But so here's my thing is we have all these people that are using foster kids as an argument to justify abortion. And, okay, well, if you really care so much about the foster care system and what these kids are going to potentially go into, why don't we spend our time and energy as a society as a whole coming up with solutions and coming together on this issue and trying to reform the foster care system and see how we can make improvements? And we always get from the other side too, well, are you going to adopt all the kids in foster care? Are you going to take care of all of these kids? And it's like, well,
Are you?
no, but are you? You're using these children as an argument. Well, what about you? Are you going to step up and take care of all these children? But, cuz you can advocate for something without having to, fix every little thing,
Solve the
just.
world's problems.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me, it's like, this is an issue we should all come together on and figure out how we can make foster care better instead of using time and energy to argue why we need to end the lives of
Yeah.
children before they're even born because of this horrible system. No,
Well,
let's fix the system.
this is just another example because I've talked about this a lot, but this is just another example of people using abortion as a really like bad band-aid for a much deeper issue. And I think that
Mhm.
that just does society and people a disservice if all we're doing is not actually looking into how to solve the deeper problems, but we're just like slapping a band-aid on it, which it's an awful band-aid because it causes way more harm than good, right?
Exactly.
um
Yeah.
why are we still just saying, oh, there's this really deeply rooted social issue, abortion will fix it? Like, it honestly feels childish. It's like, I don't I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, look where we're at. Nothing's been fixed. In fact, there's been more harm than good coming from abortion. You have so many women hurting, you have even men, that's a whole other issue, that are losing out on fatherhood. They're hurting, broken families. It's a really terrible thing, and it should never be a band-aid for anything. And I just feel like if people are going to use their time and energy to advocate for abortion, let's advocate to make it a better foster care system and a better society as a whole where women can have the support that they need and raise their children, which is why I absolutely just love Let Them Live and working for Let Them Live, because I feel like it's just such a different approach to this issue, getting to the deeper problem instead of, just slapping a band-aid on it. And it's like, no, let's actually get to the root of the problem here and help these women. So
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's been amazing how Let Them Live has evolved, into that, and just realizing that, yes, we are, fighting abortion, right? We're helping women cancel their abortions, but then, it's more than just saying, hey, don't have the abortion.
mhm.
It's more than that. It's diving deeper and saying, like, what's causing you to feel like you have to do this, because women don't want to do it. And I think that's another, like, we're just educating people here to care, like educating on the foster care system, educating about adoption, educating about abortion, when what women really want. I mean, and you've seen this, so you can talk about it as well, but educating people that women don't actually want to have abortions. Like, it's
Mhm.
not this great solution that I think a lot of people are trying to make it out to be. And we can actually get together with people who have all types of opinions on abortion to actually find solutions for women. So while you've been working with Let Them Live and volunteering with Let Them Live, also share what you do with Let Them Live, because I think I forgot to do that at the beginning. What have you seen, like, comments on social media, versus like what really we experience working with women directly?
Yeah, it really is that deeper issue there where we see a lot of women, even I will say working with social media, we see a lot of comments from either women who have had abortions in the past, who kind of give their reasoning of why they had the abortion and really just saying, they wish that they had known about Let Them Live before they made that choice because they're suffering tremendously from that choice. And a lot of it is a lot of the same issues, just not having support from their partners or, facing financial crisis. And they all just, or, facing abuse, just different situations. And like I said, seeing these comments of women that wish they had known about Let Them Live prior to having their abortion is just honestly heartbreaking to me, because it's like, wow, if they had just known that there was that love and that support there and a community of people that just want to walk beside these women, they could have made such a different choice and not be hurting how they're hurting. And, I kind of sometimes blame the media a lot because you kind of just see from both sides, you kind of just see the extreme on both sides. The media likes to portray, that there's all these women and they're just getting abortions because it's fun and they're using it as birth control and all these things. And don't get me wrong, there are women who are doing that. There is. But I feel like, like I said, a majority of these women are feeling pressured into abortion. And then you kind of get it on the other side too, where it's the media likes to portray, the pro-life as like, we just want to, put bans on women's bodies and we don't care about the child after they're born. We don't care about the women. When in reality, it's like, no, take a step back here and look at, what these organizations are doing, specifically Let Them Live. It's like, no, we're walking beside these women and we're getting to the deeper issue here. And just imagine if all those people that put that time and effort into arguing that women should have the right to choose and they should be able to get an abortion, why, put that same time and effort into figuring out what this woman really wants and how you can help her. Because like you said, a majority of the time it's not abortion. It's not.
100%. Well, and that's the thing that you hit on. Like, Let Them Live, we have pro choice donors. And I know that we can keep growing this with people that we disagree with on abortion,
Mhm.
because there's so many of us that say, okay, like, let's look at the deeper issue, regardless if we're pro life, pro choice, or whatever. And that's really where we're going to find success, because a lot of people, like we've been talking about, say like, oh, she needs to have an abortion because her kid's going to end up in foster care. Well, that's also putting a lot of doubt on that mom. And I think that's what we see a lot too is people are just expecting these moms who find themselves in unexpected pregnancies to fail, or
Mhm.
they're not willing to help them so that they can succeed. So like kids wouldn't have to go into foster care. Kids wouldn't have to grow up, in poor situations if we can continue to have ministries like Let Them Live, where as a community, like you said, we're all pouring into these moms and helping her to be the best mom she can be to provide for her children. So really, like, the root of it is not doubting these moms and not just expecting that they're going to fail,
Mhm.
but empowering them and supporting them as a group of people, like and like we said, like, these women, they don't want to have this abortion. And so a lot of us can all agree that coerced abortions, whether it's by, a partner or because of the situation, like financial burden, like coerced abortions, that's not okay. Like informed consent is a really important thing.
Mhm.
Um, fully knowing the range of options and the consequences of each option is really important.
Mhm. Yeah, and the sad thing here is that this issue of abortion, it's just so extreme on both sides. You're either pro-choice or pro-life, and it's just this it really is this issue that I feel like we could really come together on. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I know that abortion ends the life of a preborn child, and I think that's wrong. And I think it's very important to put laws in place to protect preborn children. But I also think in the meantime and in the background, it's important to also push laws that will really just give women more support and to really just try and build a society that wants to build women up and not bring them down, in the sense of, I see lots of comments, even, if we're trying to fundraise for a mom or something, we'll get comments of, the mom, or she should have kept her legs closer. She shouldn't have done this. Why didn't she, make a better choice before getting pregnant? And the thing here is, it's already done. The preborn child already exists. And so instead of focusing on that and shaming this mom, let's focus on how we can help her make that choice to choose life, because there is another life at stake here. And people make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And who are we to, judge somebody from the situation they're coming from, or what led them to where they're at? The main, after the preborn child exists, it's the importance and, best thing to do is to really just figure out this mom's needs and just walk beside her and help her choose life.
100%. Yeah, every time I see those comments that are like, "She should have kept her legs closed," I'm like, "Thank you so much, Karen, for that very valuable input. That's definitely gonna help her situation." Like, "No, what
Yeah,
are you talking about? She should have." Great, well, we're past that, okay? So,
exactly.
we're yeah.
Even the other side commenting things like, well, it's better she has an abortion because her child is not going to be loved, or her child's going to be poor. And it's like, okay, well, how reassuring is that to that mom that's seeing this comment, that there's all these people doubting her, and
Well, just
just
kick
thinks
her
that
while
she
she's
can't,
down, you know?
yeah, that she just can't do it. And it's like, how is that also helping the situation? It's not, and that's why I like to shed light on both sides. We
I
we have
think
issues
that's
on both sides, and the bottom line here is it's something we can come together on. We really can, but it's just so hyper focused on, you have to believe this and you have to believe this, and it's like, no, you can have your own separate beliefs, but how can we actually get to a solution here and actually help women and help
yeah,
newborn
and
children?
what we've seen too is it really is, us kind of, I feel like for a long time, people were always calling pro-lifers out, right? Like, well, if you're really pro-life, blah, blah, blah. Now
Mhm.
it's kind of shifted. It's like, if you're really calling yourself pro-choice and you're just supporting Planned Parenthood, like, that doesn't make any sense, because Planned Parenthood's bottom line, like monetarily as well, is
Mhm.
abortion. That's
Yeah.
it. It's abortion. It is that's it. So if you really are pro choice, you have to help women understand their choices. Okay. And
Yes.
a lot of times women are not they're not being informed about what abortion will do to them physically, mentally, emotionally, etc. They're not being informed that they are actually capable of being an amazing mom. They're not being given that support. I mean, Planned Parenthood's certainly not doing that. Planned Parenthood is certainly not saying you're going to be a great mom and we're here to support you. It's okay. Like, they're taking the fear that this woman has when she walks in and saying, don't worry, we can give you the abortion, instead of saying, hey, what are you worried about? Why
Mhm.
don't we help you with that? But I do have to give some kudos and a quick shout out in a way, I guess. I'm not saying this is Planned Parenthood as like an organization or even as individual clinics, but I think it's more so a couple of individuals who work at Planned Parenthood. But we have received referrals of moms from Planned Parenthood, and I know that you know that as well.
And that is so amazing because that's the thing I often think about is, you have all of these people working at Planned Parenthood or abortion clinics. And don't get me wrong, I know there are people, um, especially from personal experience. I can't really go into too much detail, but I had done a little bit of undercover work and I kind of had seen, both sides of there are people that are working at these clinics or, in Planned Parenthood that really feel like they're helping women and they're helping women make that choice that they want to make without they kind of have like, blinders on in a way of like, well, you're not really helping this woman because you're just supporting like her, you're not getting to the root of the issue of why she's having the abortion. You're kind of trained to like, well, she needs my help getting this abortion. I think of a lot of times with like the sidewalk like escorts and stuff like that. And it's like these may very well be very good people that really care about women and they think they're doing good and they're helping the woman make that choice that she wants to make. But in reality, it's like, like I said, deep down, no, you're kind of, you don't know if she's being pressured into this abortion or course. And then you do get people that obviously I think work at, abortion clinics, especially the abortion doctors that know what they're doing. They know they're profiting off of this woman's fear. And, at the end of the day, they're going to make a big dollar, you know. So there's both sides, but yeah, so I think it is cool, you do get those people that work there and, they believe in a woman's right to choose and, but they are trying to get to the root of the problem, like what does this woman really want? So
Yeah.
that is
And I
kind of
think
cool.
that's where we can work the most. Like, and I think, and I'll ask your opinion on this, but I know that it's kind of a new weird thing for someone like myself, for example, who's super pro life to be like, yeah, we can actually work with Planned Parenthood staff to get women to choose life. We can actually work with people who are pro choice. We have pro choice donors, we have pro choice supporters who are helping women, who are actively helping women choose life. Um, like, I understand that that's kind of like a new thing, but that being said, we have to always think about what our goal is. Our goal is to help women, to make sure that they don't, have to feel the pain of an abortion, and to give that child, just a chance at life. And so that being said, what would you say to people, and maybe there's people watching this that are pro-life that are like, I never want to talk to anyone who's pro-choice ever, and I will never work with them on anything. What would you say to them, just given what's at stake, like lives at stake?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is like I said, we live in a society where everyone is so hyper focused on, pro choice and pro life when in reality it's like it's again this issue that we can come together on and there can be people lobbying and working on pro-life bills and laws and like I said that's important and then there's people that want to stand up for this woman's right to choose and all of that like we can still do that but in the meantime it's like we can come together and really help this woman make the choice that she wants and it shouldn't be based on like, well, you think this way and I think this way, so we can't talk together, we can't work together. But and that's the thing is like that's pushed on social media where it's like, well, pro-choice people hate pro-life people and blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, actually no, there are a lot of people actually coming together and like you said we have pro-choice donors and there are people coming together on this issue. And at the end of the day, we're helping her make that choice that she wants to make. So if you're pro choice, you should really want to help her help her make that choice that she wants to make. And so it's just
100%.
it's like this endless loop of just, well, I think this and I think this. And in reality,
Yeah.
this issue is never going to be fully resolved and everyone's going to agree, but we can just try our best to make a more welcoming society for one for women and their children. I feel like we're kind of more and more in a society where it's very like anti-family and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But then, from the other side, we need to support women that are single moms or facing crisis pregnancy.
100%.
Every person is not perfect and every child is not going to be conceived in perfect circumstances. That's just not how the world works. And so
Yeah.
let's just focus on the humanity of the child
Yeah.
and also the humanity of the woman in the sense of,
Absolutely.
her what her needs are and her emotional well-being. And for one, abortion does not help in that sense with her emotional well-being or even
Yeah.
physical.
Yeah.
It's just really sad that there's just so much arguing going on when it's like let's just everybody love each other, like let's just
Let's
come
help
together.
this mom, and I think it means, and I think people need to understand too that, I have people I love and respect in my life that are pro-choice that also
Mhm.
love and respect me. And just because you find common ground with someone who's pro-choice, it doesn't mean that you are compromising on your beliefs at all. In
Exactly.
fact, actually, I think it means that you're opening the door and opening, the pro-choice person's eyes to the humanity of the woman and the child. And it actually gives us the ability to help maybe even change some of their minds as well. Because, how can you support abortion if you've supported Let Them Live enough and you've seen enough babies born that would have otherwise been aborted?
Yeah.
Something's got to change. And so I think it's really important, like for pro-life people, to just continue to see how we can find common ground with people in order to help women, because that's really how we're going to change hearts and minds. And like I've said before, and I think you agree as well, Takara, like that's really how you end things, or like that's how we end abortion, or that's how we make a huge dent in abortion numbers, is by changing hearts and minds. Like laws can absolutely do their part, um but but if something's illegal and your heart and your mind and are in a completely different place, like the law may not stop you, as we've seen since Roe
Yeah.
was overturned. So
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it really is. It's about, again, the laws are very important, but it is about changing hearts and minds. It's about changing this narrative in society, that children are a burden and that they're going to be born in this awful world and so they're better off aborted. And it's like no. It's like that's not true. Again, like you said, everyone has suffering, everyone has pain, but everyone also is born and has the ability to live this beautiful life and do these amazing things. And it really is just kind of crazy to me to think, you know, I came from a situation where my birth mom probably was pressured into maybe having an abortion. She was using drugs and, not financially stable and all of those things. And it's like to think if she had made that choice to abort me, I like this life that I have like would not exist. My children would not exist. It's like, we always touch on kind of saving generations here. It's like it's such a bigger picture. It's just this one little choice can change so much. And I just think it's important to really kind of just let people know that, and that abortion is not this easy fix or solution. And it definitely can be very hurtful, again, for people that aren't born into ideal circumstances to think like I
yeah,
would have been better off aborted. Or, it's sad to me that I've actually seen comments from, people that are, I wish I'd been aborted or my life sucks. And it's just like, well, I bet you there's a lot of babies right now up in heaven that wish, they could
yeah,
be down here experiencing this beautiful thing that we called life. So
100%. Well, I have one last question for you, and it just kind of came to me. So, is it a stretch to say that foster care like saved your life? So, like a lot of women, maybe they're pregnant and they don't know what to do, but they know that there is, even though it has its flaws and it needs, to be fixed in a lot of ways, it's sort of a safety net. So
mhm.
women feel like I don't know, like, is that a stretch to say? Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I totally understand. I often think about how different my life
Right.
could have been if, I hadn't gone into foster care and been adopted by my parents. And I just think about, we always hear the horror stories of foster care and the different families and, what kids are facing. And while that is definitely happening, there are also so many stories of children finding their forever families and being loved. And there's always going to be bad. There's always going to be bad in everything. You hear bad stories of, doctors that, are healing their patients when in reality they're abusing them or doing different things. It's like, but should we completely just like, say the every doctor is just terrible and horrible when in reality that's not the case. Most doctors are saving lives. Where same with the foster care system. There are so many foster families that are taking in children and just giving them a home and loving them and giving them, better opportunities for to live a good life and to feel loved and success and all of that. And it's so I just think of, yeah, my family, and there's 8 of us, we're all adopted. And to just I knowing some of the situations that even some of my siblings came from, like my adoptive siblings and stuff, is just it's horrific. And it's just amazing to see them now thriving and us being a family, and we all come from different backgrounds, but it's like I always say, like, I love being adopted because it's like I don't know, like, these people that didn't have to love me or give me shelter or care about me, like, went out of their way to give me that. They didn't have to do
Yeah.
that.
It was
They don't
super
owe me anything, but they love
yeah,
me unconditionally. And
I
so,
love that.
yeah.
I love that. That's what, Nathan, his little sister, Lily, she was adopted from China. She's 18 now, and we always talk about how, Nathan was kind of a, "Oh, hello, I'm pregnant," when his mom was pregnant with him and Oliver, but, like, Lily was very much planned, very much thought and prayer and money and time went into her, and that is actually just so beautiful, and the same thing with you, Takara, and your story and your experience in the foster care system, and then your family saying, like, we want you. Like, they were intentional with
Yeah.
you and all of your siblings, and I think that it's absolutely beautiful. And I'm really glad that you came on finally, that we actually did this, that we
Yeah, no, thank you.
finally scheduled it, and that you shared your story. Was there any last like thoughts that you wanted to share before we sign off?
Um, I think I kind of got everything out today that was kind of like working in there. I've been thinking about the last couple days, like really what I wanted to say and just touch on. And I'm just thankful that you gave me this opportunity to kind of share my thoughts and my story. And I really just hope it kind of helps other people and, resonates with others, and even those that are come from foster care and are adopted, like, to just know how loved you are and how amazing you are. And just anybody can use their voice to stand up for women and stand up for the preborn, and we can love them both. We really can, and we need to just really push for that in society. It should never be one or the other. It can be both.
100%. I love that. Yeah, you're literally a living example of, why, we do what we do, why Let Them Live exists, why we're pro-life, why we support women. And I'm just so grateful for everything that you do for Let Them Live and your voice. So thank you again for sharing. And thank you guys for watching or listening. And we'll see you next time for our next episode of the Let Them Live podcast. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Let Them Live podcast with Emily Burning. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know your thoughts in the comments and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.